Cortez described a giant rack containing thousands of human skulls.
Barry, why did the Aztecs do this?
This was a public record of the human sacrifices that had been made at the Great Temple.
And what purpose did it serve?
It served a big political purpose to show the might of the Aztec Empire. Remember that when these skull racks were in use, each of these poles would be filled completely with human skulls.
How many?
It's been estimated that the big skull rack and the 5 smaller ones could have held up to 60,000 skulls. It is a visible statement that the empire could send an army out to conquer and capture an enormous number of people.
After the Spanish victory, Catholic priests and friars burned most of the Aztec historical drawings known as codices. A few survive, but most of what scholars know about the 1487 mass sacrifice comes from Spanish accounts written after the conquest. Several of these documents mention the 4-day sacrificial ceremony that claimed an astonishing number of lives.
One record by Duran, the Dominican friar Diego Duran, gives us 80,400 as the number. Now, that's high, of course. I mean, that's a huge number of people to, for one thing, bring into a city that has 200 or 250,000 people. Imagine, where do you put them?
The Spanish mindset at the time was such that they would have been willing to have accepted the 80,000 figure because they regarded the Aztecs as heathens, as savages, as barbarians.
While today's historians agree that the 1487 event did occur, there is no consensus on the number of victims. Even the earliest records of this event are in conflict. This one, an Aztec codex from the 16th century.
There's a codex called the Codex Telleriano-Rimensis. Shows an image of that particular event, and it indicates 20,000 with glyphs. And these 2 little bags here indicate 8,000 apiece, the number 8,000. And these little tree-like affairs, they're actually hairs, they each indicate 400. So there are 10 of those, so that's 8,000, 8,000, and 4,000. That's 20,000 people.
Could this staggering body count possibly be correct? If so, where did the Aztecs procure 20,000 people they could afford to do without? The answer to that tells us something important about how the Aztec Empire worked. These expendable souls were captured enemy soldiers.
At this time, the Aztec Empire was a really well-oiled war machine. It would not have been difficult for them to have gathered up 20,000 sacrificial offerings from around the empire. This is the bottom stage, the first stage of this pyramid. If this were an actual sacrifice, and you were the person to be sacrificed, you would be tied by your neck, and if you fainted or got rubbery legs, I would grab you by the hair and I would pull you up if I were your captor. At this point, 4 priests grab you and lay you across the sacrificial stone that way, and 1 up with each arm, 1 with each leg. A 5th priest would put a wooden yoke, they call it, over your neck and would stretch you taut to make your chest taut on this sacrificial stone. And then a priest with 1 swoop opens your chest with a flint knife and sever the arteries of the heart, and then he would hold up the still beating heart. He would offer it first to the god Huitzilopochtli, then he would turn and show it to each of the other 3 cardinal directions in turn, and then finally he would place the still beating heart in this receptacle. And at that point, the 4 priests who were holding your arms and legs would tumble your body down the steps, clear to the bottom.
But why 20,000 victims? Did some unknown event trigger a particularly vigorous display of devotion to the Aztec gods? Barry thinks that the mass offering was about more than religion.
This 1487 sacrifice had a political component as well as a religious component. Its aim, in a political sense, was one of shock and awe, because they invited foreign dignitaries, they invited the rulers of enemy states to come in and witness this event, which was the most spectacular sacrificial event that the Aztecs had ever put on.
It was obviously an intimidation as warrior after warrior after warrior becomes sacrificed, and it's a way to flaunt your powers.
This event was superbly organized. There was no shortage of priests to step in as replacements whenever a sacrificer priest became tired.
Nor was there any shortage of sacrificial sites. In addition to the 4 altars atop the Templo Mayor, Aztec priests employed 15 other sites throughout the city.
The reason for having as many altars as they did, and we are pretty sure they had 19, was to be able to accommodate a very large number of human sacrificial offerings in a single coordinated event spread over merely 4 days.
Spanish accounts tell of long queues of enemy captives, stretching from outside the sacred precinct all the way to the top of the Templo Mayor. But still, how was it possible to sacrifice that many human beings in an orderly fashion? Barry has worked it out.
If we assume that each sacrifice would have taken about 2 minutes, that means that 30 men would have been sacrificed at each altar per hour. Over 10 hours, this means that 300 men would have been sacrificed at each altar each day. We also know that there were 19 altars in use on this particular event. This gives us, if you multiply 1,200 by 19, you get 22,800. This is what makes the 20,000 figure believable.